The vampire king had not fed in 17 days, and his court was counting on his death. Delilah Monroe had heard the rumors from her roommate's boyfriend, who worked as a cleaner in the corporate offices above the underground complex where the vampire nobility held their ancient court. In the modern world, vampires had learned to hide in plain sight, their palaces tucked beneath skyscrapers, their laws enforced in marble halls that human city planners believed were simply elaborate subway extensions. Most humans never knew they existed. Delilah hadn't known either, not until 6 months ago when she'd stumbled through the wrong door during her late-night shift at the archives building downtown. She'd been cataloging historical documents, her fingers dust-covered and her eyes tired, when she'd taken a wrong turn looking for the bathroom. The door had been unlocked, the stairs had been lit, and she'd descended into a world of white marble, flickering torches, and impossibly beautiful creatures with skin like moonlight and eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. They should have killed her. She knew that now. But King Ambrosius Thornfield had been there that night, walking through his halls with several members of his court, and when the guards had seized her, he'd simply looked at her with those ancient silver eyes and said, "Let her go. She means no harm." His voice had been like winter itself, cold and absolute. The guards had released her immediately. She'd fled back up the stairs, her heart hammering, certain she'd imagined everything. But the next night, she'd gone back. And the night after that. Slowly, carefully, she'd begun to understand the world beneath her feet. The vampire court operated on old laws, older than any human government. King Ambrosius had ruled for 3 centuries, maintaining an uneasy peace between several vampire houses that constantly vied for power. He was respected, feared, and according to the whispers Delilah had overheard during her careful visits to the public areas of the court, recently betrayed. His cousin, Lady Seraphine Ashworth, had accused him of breaking sacred law by allowing a human to witness their world and live. She'd gathered support from the other noble houses, all of whom saw an opportunity to weaken a king they resented. The punishment they'd decided upon was ancient and brutal: starvation. No member of the court was permitted to offer him blood, and he was forbidden from hunting. He was to be locked in his chambers until he either died or submitted to their authority completely, agreeing to whatever new laws they demanded. Delilah had watched from the shadows as they'd sealed him inside 3 weeks ago. She'd seen the cruel satisfaction on Seraphine's face, the cold calculation in the eyes of the other nobles, and she'd felt something twist inside her chest, something that had been growing ever since that first night when he'd spared her life. She couldn't let him die. The decision was insane, she knew. She was a 23-year-old graduate student with student loans in a studio apartment that smelled like old books. She had no business involving herself in vampire politics. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, remembered the unexpected mercy he'd shown her, the way he'd looked at her not with hunger, but with something almost like curiosity. So on the 17th night, she made her plan. The guards changed shifts at 3 in the morning. She'd been observing their patterns for weeks, notebook in hand, pretending to be researching architectural features whenever anyone questioned her presence. Most of the court had grown used to the strange human girl who haunted their public halls, sketching columns and taking notes. They thought her harmless, perhaps slightly mad. That suited her perfectly. At 2:45, she slipped through the service entrance she'd discovered behind a false panel in the archives building basement. She carried a small bag with her, the contents making her stomach turn with anxiety. Inside was a sterile blade, bandages, and a small container. She'd considered trying to steal blood from a hospital, but that seemed both impossible and potentially dangerous. She had no idea what kinds of diseases might affect vampires, so she would offer her own. It was the only logical solution, even if the thought made her hands shake. The corridor leading to the king's chambers was dark. The torches had been extinguished, a deliberate cruelty from the court. They wanted him to suffer in darkness, alone, his strength fading day by day. Delilah had brought a small flashlight, but she kept it off, letting her eyes adjust to the gloom. She couldn't risk being seen. The doors to his chambers were massive, carved from black wood and sealed with chains wrapped in cloth, inscribed with symbols she didn't recognize. Some kind of magical binding, she assumed. But the chains were on the outside, meant to keep him in, not to keep others out. Her fingers trembled as she slowly, carefully, began to unwrap them. The metal was cold and the cloth fell away in whispers. She worked for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, her breath loud in her ears, her heart racing. Any moment, a guard could return. Any moment, she could be caught. Finally, the last chain fell away. The door wasn't locked, she realized. It didn't need to be. Who would dare enter the chambers of a starving vampire king? She pushed it open just enough to slip inside, then closed it behind her. The darkness was absolute. She stood frozen, listening. For a long moment, there was nothing. Then she heard it, breathing, slow and labored from somewhere deeper in the room. Who dares? The voice was weaker than she remembered, but still carried that note of absolute authority. Have you come to watch me die, Seraphine? I did not think you so petty. It's not Seraphine. Delilah's voice came out barely above a whisper. She turned on her flashlight, keeping the beam low. The room that illuminated was magnificent even in its darkness. Heavy curtains covered what must be windows, though she knew they'd be shuttered and sealed against any possibility of sunlight. Furniture that looked centuries old filled the space, elegant and austere. And in the center, on a massive bed with posts carved like twisted trees, was the king. He looked different from the last time she'd seen him. His skin, always pale, now seemed almost translucent. His white hair fell around his shoulders in tangled waves, no longer the perfect courtly style he'd maintained. He wore dark clothing that seemed too large on his frame now, and when he turned his head toward her light, his silver eyes had a desperate, wild quality she'd never seen before. You. His voice held disbelief. The human girl. The archivist. Delilah, she said, taking a step closer. My name is Delilah Monroe. You should not be here. He tried to sit up, but the movement seemed to cost him. He fell back against the pillows, his jaw clenched. If they find you here, they will kill you. Not even I could prevent it, not in my current state. Then I'll have to make sure they don't find me. She set down her bag and pulled out the supplies she'd brought. Her hands were steadier now that she was actually here, now that she was committed. I know what they're doing to you. I know about the starvation punishment. Of course you do. You've been haunting these halls like a ghost for months. A bitter smile crossed his face. Did you think I did not notice? I am a king, Delilah Monroe. I am aware of everything that happens in my domain. Then you know I'm trying to help you. He went very still. His eyes tracked to the blade in her hand, the container. Understanding dawned across his features, followed immediately by something that looked almost like horror. No, the word was absolute. I forbid it. You're dying. Then I die. I will not feed from you. Delilah sat on the edge of his bed, and he actually flinched away from her, pressing himself back against the headboard. The fear in that movement broke something inside her chest. Why did you spare me? She asked quietly. That first night, when I stumbled into your world, you could have had me killed. Your cousin is right, according to your laws. I should have died for witnessing your court. But you let me go. Why? Ambrosius closed his eyes. I have lived for 300 years, Delilah. I have seen countless humans live and die. Most of them blur together, meaningless. But occasionally, one stands out. You walked into a hall full of vampires. You looked around with wonder rather than fear. And when the guards seized you, you did not scream or beg. You simply asked, very politely, if you'd taken a wrong turn. He opened his eyes again, and there was something achingly sad in them. You reminded me that humans can be brave, that they can be curious, that they can be more than prey. I spared you because in that moment, you made me remember why I have fought for 3 centuries to maintain peace between our kinds rather than war. Delilah felt tears prick at her eyes. Then let me help you fight now. You don't understand what you're offering. I understand perfectly. She picked up the blade. I've been researching vampire biology for 6 months. I know you need blood to survive. I know you're weakening every day. And I know that if you die, this court will fall into chaos. Seraphine will take power, and from everything I've overheard, she has no interest in maintaining peace with humans. She'll push for war, for revelation, for dominance. You've been listening to court gossip. Despite his weakness, there was approval in his voice. I'm an archivist. Research is what I do. She held up the blade. This is sterile. I'll make a small cut, fill the container. You can drink from that if drinking directly from me is too dangerous. It's not the method I object to. His voice had gone rough. Delilah, if I taste your blood, if I know what you taste like, I will never be free of wanting you. Vampire bonds are not like human attraction. When we feed from someone, when we taste their life, it creates a connection. And given how starved I am, given how close to death, that connection would be catastrophic. I would become obsessed with you. I would crave you above all other blood. I would... He stopped himself, his hands fisting in the bedsheets. You would what? I would want to keep you. The admission seemed torn from him. I would want to hold you close, to protect you, to ensure no harm ever came to you so that I could have your blood again and again. It is not love, Delilah, it is possession, and you deserve better than to become a vampire's addiction. She thought about that for a long moment. Outside, she could hear the distant sound of voices, guards making their rounds. They didn't have much time. What if I'm willing to risk it? She finally said. Why would you be? Because you spared me when you didn't have to. Because in 6 months of watching you rule, I've seen you be fair and just even when it cost you politically. Because I've read the histories, and I know that before you became king, the vampire houses were at war and humans were caught in the crossfire. You ended that. You created laws that protected both our kinds. She took a breath. And because when I look at you, I don't see a monster. I see someone worth saving. Ambrosius stared at her with an expression she couldn't read. You are either the bravest woman I have ever met, he said slowly, or the most foolish. Can I be both? Despite everything, he laughed. It was a weak sound, but genuine. Yes, he said, I suppose you can. Delilah didn't give herself time to second guess. She pressed the blade to her inner forearm, where she'd read the blood would flow most easily, and made a quick, shallow cut. The pain was sharp but manageable. Blood welled up immediately, dark red against her pale skin. She held her arm over the container, letting it drip. The sound of it hitting the glass seemed impossibly loud. Ambrosius had gone absolutely rigid. His eyes were fixed on her arm, on the blood, and his pupils had dilated until his eyes were almost entirely black, with just a ring of silver around the edges. His fangs had descended, she realized, visible when his lips parted. She'd never actually seen vampire fangs before. They were longer than she'd expected, elegant and terrifying all at once. Delilah, her name was a warning, a prayer. It's okay, she whispered. Take it, please. When she'd filled the container about halfway, she set it aside and pressed a bandage to her arm. The bleeding stopped quickly. She held out the container to him. For a moment, she thought he would refuse. His whole body was shaking with the effort of restraint. Then, moving faster than her eyes could follow, he took the container from her hands and drank. The change was immediate. Color returned to his skin, just slightly. The desperate, wild quality in his eyes faded, replaced by sharp awareness. He drank every drop, and when he was finished, he set the container aside very carefully and turned to look at her. Oh, he breathed. Oh, no. What? What's wrong? You taste like summer. His voice was filled with wonder and despair. Like sunlight and wildflowers and every beautiful day I can no longer have. You taste like life itself, Delilah Monroe, and I will crave you until the end of my immortal existence. She should have felt afraid. Instead, all she felt was a strange warmth spreading through her chest. Is that really so terrible? You don't understand. He reached out, then stopped himself, his hand hovering in the air between them. I want to touch you. I want to pull you close and never let you go. I want to keep you here in this room where you'll be safe, where I can protect you, where no one can ever harm you. These feelings are not rational. They are not kind. They are the possessive instincts of a predator who has found perfect prey. Or, Delilah said softly, they're the feelings of someone who's been alone for a very long time and has finally found a connection. You romanticize what I am. Maybe. Or maybe you demonize yourself too much. She shifted closer to him on the bed. You've had 17 days to think about dying. Did you think about me at all? He closed his eyes. Every day. I wondered if you would hear about my death. I wondered if you would mourn me, or if you would simply return to your human life and forget you ever stumbled into our world. I wondered if I should have spoken to you more, those times I saw you in the halls. I wondered if your voice sounded as lovely in conversation as it did when you asked the guards about the architecture. He opened his eyes again. Yes, Delilah. I thought of you, and I told myself it was the delusion of a dying mind, that I had no right to think of you, that you were human and precious and free. and I was a monster who had already taken too much from your kind over the centuries. You're not a monster. I have killed. In war, you said. In the conflicts before you became king, you established peace. I have fed from humans who did not offer willingly. Before you created the blood banks and the donor programs, I've read about those too. You set up systems so vampires could feed without hunting. She reached out and took his hand. His skin was cool, but not cold. His fingers were long and elegant, and they trembled slightly at her touch. You've spent 3 centuries trying to be better. Doesn't that count for something? It counts for nothing if I cannot control myself around you. Then learn control. You're 300 years old. Surely you've learned some self-discipline in that time. He actually smiled at that, a real smile that made him look younger despite his ageless features. You are remarkable. I'm really not. I'm just stubborn. She squeezed his hand. The blood I gave you, will it be enough? For now, it's already healing the worst of the damage, but Delilah, I will need to feed again, regularly. And as long as the court has me imprisoned here, I have no access to the blood banks or the donor programs. Then I'll come back. No. He sat up fully now, his strength clearly returning. It's too dangerous. If Seraphine or the guards catch you, they won't. I've been coming here for 6 months without being caught. I know the patterns, the timing, the routes. I can keep doing this. Why? The question was anguished. Why would you risk so much for me? Delilah realized she was still holding his hand. She looked down at their intertwined fingers, his pale and perfect, hers human and fragile. Because, she said quietly, I think I've been falling in love with you for 6 months, and I didn't even realize it until they locked you in here. The silence that followed was profound. Then Ambrosius moved, pulling her close with a gentleness that belied his strength. His arms wrapped around her, and she could feel the way he was shaking. I will protect you, he whispered against her hair. Whatever happens, whatever comes, I will protect you. This, I swear. She pressed her face against his chest, hearing the slow, steady beat of his heart. Vampires had hearts, she'd learned. They were just slower, more efficient. We'll protect each other, she said. They stayed like that for a long moment, holding each other in the darkness. Then, Delilah reluctantly pulled away. I need to go. The guards will be changing shifts soon. When will you return? 2 days. Give your body time to process what I gave you. I'll bring more then. Delilah. He cupped her face in his hands, his silver eyes intense. If anything happens, if you are caught or threatened, do not try to be brave. Tell them everything. Tell them I compelled you, that you had no choice. The court knows I am old enough and powerful enough to enthrall humans. They will believe it. I won't betray you. It would not be betrayal. It would be survival. Promise me. She could see how important this was to him, so she nodded. I promise. He kissed her forehead, a gesture so tender it made her chest ache. 2 days. I will count every hour. She gathered her supplies and slipped back out into the corridor. The chains she wrapped carefully back around the door, exactly as they had been. By the time she heard the guards returning, she was already gone, a ghost in the darkness. The next 2 days were agony. Delilah went through her normal routine, cataloging documents, attending her graduate classes, having coffee with her roommate. But her mind was elsewhere, constantly running through what she'd done, what she would do, the feeling of Ambrosius's arms around her. She was in love with a vampire king. It was insane. It was impossible. It was the most real thing she'd ever felt. On the second night, she returned. The process was the same. Waiting for the guard change, slipping through the service entrance, removing the chains. But this time when she entered his chambers, he was waiting for her by the door. He pulled her into his arms immediately, holding her close. You came. I said I would. I was afraid. Afraid you would reconsider, afraid you would realize the danger. I'm not afraid. She pulled back to look at him. He looked better, she noted with relief. Still too thin, still weakened, but no longer on the verge of death. How are you feeling? Stronger. Your blood is potent, Delilah, far more than ordinary human blood. I don't understand it. Maybe it's because I gave it willingly. Maybe that makes a difference. Perhaps. He led her further into the room. Someone had lit candles while he'd been imprisoned, she noticed. The warm light cast shadows across his face, highlighting his sharp cheekbones, his elegant features. He really was beautiful, in an otherworldly way that made her breath catch. She prepared as she had before, sterilizing the blade, readying the container. But this time when she raised it to her arm, Ambrosius caught her wrist. "May I?" he asked quietly. She understood what he was asking, not to feed from the container, but directly from her. It was more dangerous, more intimate, more likely to strengthen the bond between them. She should say no. She should maintain some distance, some safety. "Yes," she whispered. He guided her to sit on the edge of the bed, then knelt before her. His hand was gentle as he held her wrist, examining the faint scar from where she'd cut herself 2 days ago. He pressed a kiss to it, and she shivered. "This will hurt for just a moment," he said, "but I promise I will make it as pleasant as possible." Before she could respond, his fangs pierced her wrist. The pain was sharp and immediate, making her gasp. But then something else flooded through her, a warmth that spread from the bite up her arm and through her entire body. It felt like sinking into a hot bath, like the drowsy contentment of a perfect summer afternoon. Her head fell back, and a soft sound escaped her lips. Ambrosius made a low noise against her skin, something between a groan and a purr. She could feel him drinking, could feel the gentle pull of her blood leaving her body. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it was the most intimate thing she'd ever experienced. When he finally pulled away, he immediately pressed his tongue to the wound. She felt it tingle and close, healing far faster than it should have. Vampire venom, she realized dimly. It had healing properties. "Delilah." His voice was rough, his eyes almost black again. "You taste even better than I remembered. You're going to be my undoing." "Good," she managed, still floating in the pleasant haze. "I want to undo you." He laughed, pulling her down into his arms. They lay together on the bed, her head on his chest, his fingers running through her hair. "Tell me about your life," he said, "your human life. I want to know everything." So she did. She told him about growing up in a small town, about losing her parents in a car accident when she was 19, about throwing herself into her studies as a way to cope. She told him about her love of history, about finding beauty in old things, about the thrill of discovering a document no one had read in centuries. He listened intently, asking questions, his hand never stopping its gentle movement through her hair. And then he told her about his life, about being turned 3 centuries ago by a vampire who'd seen potential in him, about the wars between the houses, about the slow, difficult work of building peace. "I was tired," he admitted. "So tired of fighting, of bloodshed, of watching both vampires and humans die in conflicts that solved nothing. When I took the throne, I swore I would create something better. It has not been easy. There are always those who prefer the old ways, who see humans as nothing more than food, who chafe under laws that restrict their hunting. Like Seraphine. Yes. She believes I have made us weak. She thinks peace with humans is foolish, that we should rule openly, take what we want. She has been gathering support for years, waiting for an opportunity to challenge me. And I gave her that opportunity." Delilah felt sick. "By stumbling into your world." "No." He tilted her face up to look at him. "You gave me a gift, even if you did not know it. You reminded me why I fight, and now you are keeping me alive. When I emerge from this imprisonment, when I am strong enough to face the court again, it will be because of you. If you emerge, Ambrosius. They mean to keep you here until you submit or die. How will you escape? The law states I must remain imprisoned until the court agrees to release me. I cannot break free through force without violating sacred law, which would give Seraphine grounds to declare me an outlaw and rally all the houses against me." He smiled, and there was something sharp in it. "But the law says nothing about what happens if I am strong enough to simply outlast them. They expect me to weaken and die or beg for mercy. If instead I remain healthy and defiant, eventually their resolve will crack. The other houses support Seraphine only because they think I am finished. If I prove otherwise, they will reconsider. So we wait. I keep feeding you, keeping you strong until the court gives up. It could take weeks, months even. Then I'll come for weeks or months." She pressed a kiss to his jaw. "I'm not going anywhere. You're going to destroy me completely, aren't you?" "I hope so." They spent another hour together before she had to leave. He held her the entire time, as though afraid she might disappear if he let go. When she finally slipped away, rewrapping the chains and vanishing into the darkness, she felt his gaze following her. She returned 2 nights later, then 2 nights after that. A pattern established itself. She would come in the dark hours of the morning, would feed him from her wrist while he held her close. They would talk for as long as she dared stay, sharing stories, learning each other. And with each visit, the bond between them grew stronger. Delilah could feel it, a pull toward him that went beyond logic or reason. When she was away from him, part of her ached. When she was with him, she felt complete in a way she'd never experienced before. She'd never believed in soulmates, in destiny, in any of the romantic notions she'd read about in books. But with Ambrosius, she was beginning to believe. He was different with her than he was when performing the role of king, she learned. Softer, more open. He would smile at her stories about modern technology and human politics, fascinated by how much the world had changed. He would tell her about art and music from centuries past, about watching history unfold. He would hold her as though she were something precious, something to be treasured, and he would feed from her with a reverence that made her feel worshipped. Each time, the pleasure was more intense, the connection deeper. She began to crave it as much as he did, counting the hours until she could see him again. 3 weeks into their secret arrangement, something changed. Delilah arrived as usual, slipping through the corridors. But when she removed the chains and entered his chambers, she found Ambrosius pacing like a caged animal, tension radiating from every line of his body. "What's wrong?" she asked immediately. "Seraphine came today." His voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "She is growing suspicious. I should be dead by now, or at least too weak to stand. Instead, I am clearly healthy. She knows something is wrong. Did she guess about me?" "No, but she is watching more carefully. She's increased the guard patrols, changed their patterns. Delilah, it's becoming too dangerous for you to come here. I'll be more careful." "That's not enough." He turned to her, his eyes blazing. "If they catch you, they will kill you. Do you understand that? Not imprison you, not punish you. They will kill you, and I will be forced to watch, and there will be nothing I can do to stop it." She crossed to him, taking his hands. "Then we make sure they don't catch me." "You are not listening." He pulled away, running his hands through his white hair. "I cannot lose you. The very thought makes me want to tear this palace apart. That is the bond. Delilah. That is what I warned you about. I am obsessed with you, consumed by you. If anything happens to you, I will not be responsible for what I do." "Ambrosius." She stepped into his space, forcing him to look at her. "Do you think it's only you? Do you think I don't feel the same pull? I walk through my human life like a ghost, because all I can think about is getting back to you. I dream about you. I count the minutes. When I feed you, when your fangs pierce my skin, I feel more alive than I ever have before." She cupped his face in her hands. "Maybe it started as a bond, as vampire magic, but it's become more than that. I love you. Not because of supernatural compulsion, but because of who you are. Because you're kind and just and you carry the weight of 3 centuries with grace. Because you make me laugh. Because when you hold me, I feel safe. Because you see me, really see me, in a way no one else ever has." He stared at her, his expression stunned. "You love me." "Yes. You are human. You are young. You have a full life ahead of you, a life in the sunlight, a life I can never fully share. You could have anyone. I want you." "I'm a vampire, Delilah. I'm possessive and dangerous, and I will live for centuries after you die." His voice broke on the last word. "Oh." Understanding crashed through her. This wasn't just about the bond or the danger. He was afraid of losing her to time, to mortality. "Then turn me," she said. "What?" "When this is over, when you've reclaimed your throne and it's safe, turn me. Make me like you." "No." The refusal was immediate and absolute. "I will not damn you to this existence. It's not damnation if it means I get to be with you." "You don't know what you're saying. To be vampire is to be forever apart from humanity, to watch everyone you knew grow old and die, to survive on blood, to hide from the sun. I know all of that. I've researched it extensively, and I'm telling you I don't care." She moved closer until they were nearly touching. "I was already alone, Ambrosius. My parents are dead. I have no siblings, no close family. My friends are people I have coffee with sometimes, but never really let in. I've been going through the motions of life without really living it. Until I found you. Until I found this." She gestured around them at the hidden vampire world. "I don't want to go back to that half-life. I want this. I want you. I want forever, if you'll give it to me." Delilah. Her name was a broken sound. You are asking me to steal your humanity. I'm asking you to give me a future. Our future. He pulled her against him, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. If I do this, if I turn you, there is no going back. You will be bound to me in ways that go beyond even what we have now. You will be mine, and I will be yours for the rest of existence. Promise? He laughed, the sound wet. She realized with shock that he was crying, bloody tears tracking down his pale cheeks. She'd never seen a vampire cry before. I promise, he whispered. When this is over, when you are safe, I will give you forever. But you must promise me something in return. Anything. Stop coming here. The risk is too great now. I'm strong enough to survive for months without feeding, thanks to what you have already given me. I will endure the weakness, the hunger, but I cannot endure the thought of you being caught. No, she shook her head fiercely. I'm not abandoning you. You would not be abandoning me. You would be staying safe until I can be with you properly. Ambrosius, if I stop coming, you'll weaken. And if you weaken, Seraphine might do something drastic. She might decide starvation is taking too long and find another way to kill you. She cannot kill me without violating law. She's already violated law by imprisoning you unjustly. What makes you think she'll stop there if she gets desperate? He had no answer for that. They stood together in the candlelight, holding each other, both knowing she was right. Finally he sighed. Then we must be more clever. You said the guard patterns have changed? Yes, but I've been watching. I can learn the new patterns. Show me. Tell me everything you have observed. They spent the next hour going over every detail of the court's security, every patrol route, every blind spot. Ambrosius had knowledge of the palace that she lacked, secret passages and forgotten routes that even the current guards might not know about. Together, they mapped out safer ways for her to reach him. There is a passage, he said finally, that connects to the old catacombs beneath the palace. It has been sealed for a century, but I know where it opens. If you could access the catacombs from the city side, you could use that route. It would be longer, but no guards patrol it. How would I unseal it? The seal is magical, keyed to vampire blood. But it is old magic, designed to keep humans out, not to keep vampires in. If you brought some of my blood with you, you could use it to break the seal. It was risky, but better than continuing to navigate the increasingly watched main corridors. Delilah agreed. That night before she left, Ambrosius carefully filled a small vial with his own blood, piercing his palm with a knife and letting it drip. The wound healed almost immediately. Vampire regeneration at work. Be careful, he told her, pressing the vial into her hand. And Delilah, I love you. I should have said it before. I love you with everything I am, everything I have been, everything I will be. She kissed him, pouring all her feelings into it. I love you too. I'll see you in 2 days through the new route. The catacombs were worse than she'd imagined. Dark, damp, filled with old bones and the smell of decay. But Delilah was determined. She followed Ambrosius's instructions, navigating through the tunnels with her flashlight and the map he'd drawn from memory. When she reached the sealed passage, she found it exactly as he'd described, a stone door covered in faintly glowing symbols. She opened the vial and carefully poured his blood over the symbols. They flared bright red, then faded. The door swung open silently. The passage beyond was narrow but clean, clearly more maintained than the public catacombs. She followed it up and up, climbing what felt like hundreds of stairs. Finally, she emerged through a hidden panel directly into Ambrosius's chambers. He was waiting, and the relief on his face when he saw her made the difficult journey worth it. It worked, she said breathlessly. You are magnificent. He pulled her close, kissing her deeply. Brave and brilliant and mine. She fed him that night, and he fed from her with an intensity that left her gasping. The pleasure was overwhelming, and she understood now why vampires and their human companions often became addicted to this exchange. It was better than anything she'd ever felt. Afterward, they lay tangled together, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her skin. I have been thinking, he said quietly, about what will happen when I am released. When, not if. I like that. You have given me hope. How could I think otherwise? He pressed a kiss to her hair. But Delilah, when I emerge, I will have to deal with Seraphine and the other houses. There will be political maneuvering, possibly even violence. I will need to be ruthless to maintain my throne. I know. I'm not naive about what you are, what you have to be. I will protect you through all of it. You will be untouchable, I swear it. But I need you to trust me, even if you do not understand my choices. I trust you. Even if I have to make alliances with people who want you dead, even if I have to pretend for a time that you mean nothing to me to keep you safe. She lifted her head to look at him. What are you planning? Nothing concrete yet, but Seraphine is not the only threat. The other houses are watching, waiting to see who will emerge victorious from this conflict. I may need to play a longer game than simply defying her. Then play it. I'll follow your lead. You say that now, but Ambrosius? She pressed a finger to his lips. I said I trust you. I meant it. You've been navigating vampire politics for 3 centuries. I'm a graduate student who reads old documents. I know my limitations. When it comes to court intrigue, I'll defer to your expertise. You are too good for me. No, I'm just practical, she smiled. Also hopelessly in love with you, which helps. They made their plans that night. When Ambrosius was finally released, they would have to be careful. Delilah would return to her human life, at least publicly. They couldn't reveal their connection, not until he'd secured his position. It would be torture, being so close but unable to be together openly. But they both understood the necessity. How long do you think you can hold out? Delilah asked. Before the court releases you? Weeks, perhaps. They're already showing signs of doubt. I can hear them arguing in the corridors sometimes when they think I cannot hear. The younger nobles are growing restless. They backed Seraphine expecting a quick victory, but I am proving more resilient than anticipated. Because of me. Because of you, he agreed. You are keeping me alive, keeping me strong. Without you, I would be dead or broken by now. The weeks that followed were intense. Delilah made the journey through the catacombs every 2 days, feeding Ambrosius, spending precious hours with him before returning to her human life. It was exhausting, maintaining the dual existence, but she wouldn't have traded it for anything. And slowly, things began to change in the court above. Ambrosius had been right. The nobles were losing patience with Seraphine's strategy. Delilah heard whispers in the public halls, saw the way vampires began to question whether the punishment had gone on long enough. Starvation was meant to break a vampire's will, but Ambrosius remained defiant, his voice strong when he spoke to the occasional visitors Seraphine allowed him. Then, 5 weeks into his imprisonment, something unexpected happened. Lord Kieran Ravenswood, one of the most powerful nobles in the court, publicly called for the king's release. This has gone on long enough, he declared during a court session that Delilah watched from the shadows. King Ambrosius has proven his strength and his resolve. To continue this punishment serves no purpose except to weaken our leadership at a time when we can afford no weakness. He violated sacred law, Seraphine hissed. He allowed a human to witness our world and live. One human, one single human who has caused no trouble, spread no tales, endangered no vampire. Is this truly worth destroying our king over? Other nobles began to murmur agreement. Seraphine's perfect control was cracking. The human girl is dangerous, she insisted. She knows our secrets. Then bind her to silence with magic, Lord Kieran suggested, or kill her if you must, but release the king. We need leadership, not this endless power struggle. Delilah felt ice run through her veins. They were talking about killing her so casually, as though she were nothing. She slipped away before she could hear more, her hands shaking. When she told Ambrosius that night, his eyes went black with rage. They will not touch you, he snarled. I will see every one of them dead before I allow that. Ambrosius, calm down. Kieran defended you. He wants you released. At the cost of your life? That is no defense. But it shows the court is turning. Seraphine is losing support. He forced himself to calm, though his hands were still fisted at his sides. You're right. And Kieran is clever. He knows I will refuse any offer that involves harming you, which will make Seraphine look unreasonable when she pushes for it. You think he's testing her? I think he's considering whether to switch his allegiance. Kieran has always been a survivor. He supports whoever he thinks will win. If he's starting to believe that's me, others will follow. It happened faster than either of them expected. 3 days later, a delegation of nobles arrived at Ambrosius's chambers. Delilah knew about it only because Ambrosius told her during her next visit, his voice filled with dark satisfaction. They offered me a deal. I can be released if I agree to submit to a council of advisors who will oversee my decisions regarding human interaction. What did you say? I refused, of course. I am king. I bow to no council. He smiled, sharp and dangerous. But the fact that they offered it all means they're desperate. Seraphine is losing control, and she knows it. So what happens now? Now we wait. She will make a mistake. She always does when she feels threatened. And when she does, I will be ready. The mistake came a week later. Delilah was in the archives, cataloging a newly acquired collection of letters, when her roommate burst in, her face pale. Delilah, you need to leave. Now. What? Why? There are people looking for you. Scary people. They came to our apartment asking questions about where you go at night, what you do. Vampire agents. It had to be. Seraphine had finally decided to move against her directly. Delilah's hands shook as she pulled out her phone. She had no way to contact Ambrosius directly, no way to warn him. All she could do was run and hope she could reach the catacombs before they found her. She fled the archives through a back exit, her heart pounding. Behind her she heard shouts. They'd seen her. The streets were crowded with evening commuters, which helped. She dodged through the crowds, trying to think. The entrance to the catacombs was blocks away. She'd never make it without being caught, unless she led them somewhere else first. Delilah made a split-second decision and turned toward the main entrance of the vampire court, the public one that she'd first stumbled through months ago. If Seraphine's agents were going to catch her anyway, better it happen where there were witnesses, where it would be harder to make her disappear quietly. She ran down the stairs, through the ornate doors, into the marble halls. Vampires turned to stare as she sprinted past, a human clearly in distress. Behind her she heard her pursuers follow. "Stop her!" someone shouted. "By order of Lady Seraphine, stop that human!" But Delilah didn't stop. She ran deeper into the palace toward the grand council chamber where she knew the court often gathered. If she was going to be caught, she'd make sure everyone saw it. She burst through the doors of the chamber, and her desperate momentum carried her forward until she stumbled and fell to her knees in the center of the room. Silence. She looked up and saw dozens of vampires staring at her, including Seraphine herself, seated on a throne that was not hers to occupy. Lord Kieran was there too, and other nobles she recognized. "Well," Seraphine said, her voice dripping with satisfaction, "the little human spy comes to us at last." Delilah struggled to her feet. "I'm not a spy." "No? Then why have you been sneaking through our halls for months? Why have you been studying our security, our patterns?" Seraphine stood, descending from the throne. "Did you think we did not notice? Did you think yourself so clever?" "I was visiting." She stopped herself. She couldn't reveal her connection to Ambrosius, not yet. It would only put him in more danger. "Visiting whom?" Seraphine stepped closer. "What human has business in our court? Unless, of course, you have been feeding someone who should be dying but mysteriously remains strong." The gasps that went through the chamber were audible. Delilah felt her stomach drop. They knew, or at least Seraphine had guessed. That's quite an accusation," Lord Kieran said mildly. "Based on what evidence?" "Based on the fact that King Ambrosius should be dead by now, and yet reports say he appears healthy. Based on the fact that this human has been seen in areas of the palace she should never have been able to access. Based on the fact that there are traces of fresh human blood in corridors near the king's chambers." Seraphine's eyes gleamed with triumph. She has been feeding him in secret, violating the court's judgment. "Is this true?" Lord Kieran asked Delilah directly. She lifted her chin, meeting his gaze. "Yes." More gasps. Seraphine looked delighted. "Then you have committed treason against this court," she purred, "the punishment for which is death." "No." The word echoed through the chamber, and Delilah's heart leapt. She knew that voice. Ambrosius stood in the doorway, and he looked like a king. Despite weeks of imprisonment, despite the starvation and isolation, he radiated power. His white hair fell perfectly around his shoulders, his silver eyes blazed with authority, and his presence seemed to fill the entire room. "No," he said again, stepping into the chamber. "You will not touch her." "You have no authority here," Seraphine snapped. "You are imprisoned, awaiting the court's judgment." "The court's judgment was for me to remain confined until I submitted or died. I have done neither, and I certainly did not give you permission to sit on my throne." His voice was cold as winter itself. "Get up." For a moment, Delilah thought Seraphine might refuse, but the authority in Ambrosius's voice was absolute, backed by 3 centuries of rule. Even Seraphine, with all her ambition, could not quite bring herself to defy it directly. She rose from the throne, but her expression was mutinous. "You violated the terms of your imprisonment by feeding." "I violated nothing. The court forbade its members from offering me blood and forbade me from hunting. It said nothing about accepting blood freely given by a human who is not a member of this court." He moved to stand beside Delilah, and she felt the protective energy radiating from him. Delilah Monroe acted of her own will, out of compassion and mercy. Qualities, I might add, that many in this chamber seem to have forgotten. "She is human," Seraphine spat. "She has no right to interfere in vampire law." "She has the right I gave her when I spared her life. Or have you forgotten? I am king, my word is law, and I declared her under my protection months ago when she first stumbled into our world. A protection that is meaningless while you are imprisoned. Then release me." Ambrosius's voice was soft, dangerous. "Call for a vote, Seraphine. Let the court decide if my imprisonment should continue. Or are you afraid of what they will say?" The tension in the room was suffocating. Every vampire present was watching, waiting. This was the confrontation that had been building for weeks. Finally, Lord Kieran spoke. "I call for a vote. All those in favor of releasing King Ambrosius from imprisonment, speak now." "Aye," came his own voice, clear and strong. A moment of hesitation, then another noble spoke. "Aye," then another, and another. The ayes built like a wave, more and more vampires declaring their support. Delilah watched Seraphine's face grow paler, saw the rage building in her eyes. When the last vote was counted, it was overwhelming. Ambrosius had the support of nearly 3/4 of the court. "The ayes have it," Lord Kieran declared. "King Ambrosius, you are released from imprisonment and restored to your full authority." Ambrosius inclined his head regally. Then he turned to Seraphine. "You attempted to usurp my throne through false accusations and unjust imprisonment. By rights, I should have you executed for treason. You wouldn't dare." But there was fear in her voice now. "No," Ambrosius agreed, "because unlike you, I do not believe in unnecessary cruelty. You will be stripped of your titles and holdings. You will be exiled from this court for a period of 1 century. If you return before that time, or if you make any attempt to move against me or mine, the sentence will be death. These are my terms. Does anyone wish to challenge them?" Silence. Even Seraphine's most loyal supporters seemed to have abandoned her. "Then it is done," Ambrosius raised his voice. "Guards, escort Lady Seraphine from the palace. She has 1 hour to gather her belongings." As Seraphine was led away, shooting venomous looks at both Ambrosius and Delilah, the king turned to address his court. "Let this be a lesson to all. I have ruled for 3 centuries with fairness and justice, but I will not tolerate attempts to undermine my authority. Those who stand with me will find me a generous king. Those who stand against me will find me merciless." The nobles bowed, murmuring their loyalty. Delilah stood frozen, hardly able to believe it was over. When the chamber finally cleared, when it was just the 2 of them, Ambrosius turned to her. "Are you hurt?" "No, I'm fine." "Ambrosius, how did you get out?" "The chains." "I broke them. The moment I heard you were in danger, I shattered the magical bindings and came for you." He cupped her face gently. "I told you I would protect you, whatever it took." "But the law forbade me from breaking free to escape. It said nothing about breaking free to defend someone under my protection. And even if it had, I would have violated it gladly for you." His eyes were intense. "Did you think I would let them hurt you? Did you think any law, any rule, any tradition was more important to me than your life?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I love you. And I love you. So very much." He kissed her softly. "But Delilah, we must be careful now. The court has accepted my authority again, but they are watching closely. If I show favoritism to a human too quickly, it could reignite the conflict." "I understand." "Do you? Because I need you to trust me for what comes next." There was something in his tone that made her wary. "What comes next?" "Lord Kieran has offered you a bargain. In exchange for his support in today's vote, I agreed to let him place you under a binding spell. It will prevent you from revealing vampire secrets to other humans. It will also mark you as under court protection, which means no vampire can harm you without facing severe punishment." "That sounds reasonable." The spell requires a blood bond. Kieran will drink from you, and you will drink from him. It is not the same as what we have, but it will create a connection. A weak one, nothing like ours, but still. He looked pained. I do not want another vampire tasting you, touching you. The very thought fills me with rage, but politically, this is necessary. Delilah understood. This was the price of her safety, of their future together. She hated it too, but she could see the logic. When? She asked. Tomorrow night. There will be a formal ceremony. The entire court will witness it. The ceremony was held in the Grand Council chamber, every noble in attendance. Delilah wore a dress that one of the court attendants had brought her, something formal and elegant that made her feel like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life. Lord Kieran was surprisingly gentle as he performed the ritual. He spoke the words of binding in an ancient language she didn't understand, then made a small cut on her wrist. When he drank, there was none of the pleasure she felt with Ambrosius, just a strange, uncomfortable pulling sensation. Then he offered his own wrist, already bleeding, and she forced herself to drink. Vampire blood tasted like metal and midnight, cold and strange. She swallowed it down and felt the magic take hold. Symbols appeared on her skin, faintly glowing marks that circled her wrists like bracelets. It is done, Kieran announced. Delilah Monroe is bound to silence and under the protection of this court. Any who harm her will answer to me personally and to the king. The court murmured its acceptance. Ambrosius, watching from his throne, looked like he wanted to murder everyone in the room, but he said nothing, his face a mask of regal composure. When the ceremony ended, Delilah was escorted to chambers that had been prepared for her in the palace. She would live there now, she'd been told. It was too dangerous for her to return to the human world fully, not when there might be vampires loyal to Seraphine who would seek revenge. The rooms were beautiful, decorated in dark woods and rich fabrics, but they felt empty and cold without Ambrosius. She waited, knowing he would come when he could. The court would expect him to maintain distance for now, to prove that his judgment wasn't compromised by his feelings for her. So she waited, sitting by the window and watching the fake stars that had been painted on the ceiling to look like a night sky. It was nearly dawn when her door opened. Ambrosius slipped inside, and before she could speak, he had her in his arms. I hated every moment of that, he said against her hair, watching another vampire drink from you, knowing I could not stop it. It meant nothing, she assured him. It was just a spell. I know, but I'm a possessive creature, and you are mine. Yours, she agreed. She pulled back to look at him. What happens now? Now I rebuild my court. I root out any remaining traitors. I strengthen my alliances and my laws. He traced the glowing marks on her wrist. And I court you properly. The court will need time to accept a human in their midst, especially one so close to their king. But I will make them accept it. And when enough time has passed, when my position is secure, I will offer you the choice I promised. The choice to turn. Yes. But Delilah, you must be certain. Once it's done, there is no undoing it. I'm certain. She had never been more certain of anything. I want forever with you. Then you shall have it. But first, we must be patient. The weeks that followed were strange. Delilah lived in the palace, officially as a ward of the court, bound to silence about vampire affairs. She continued her graduate studies remotely, her professors believing she'd taken a leave of absence for health reasons. And she watched Ambrosius rule. He was magnificent at it, she learned, commanding and just, fierce when necessary, but always fair. He met with the noble houses, strengthened alliances, created new laws that further protected both vampires and humans. And slowly, carefully, he began to show his favor for Delilah. It started small. He would speak to her at court gatherings, ask her opinion on matters of history and human culture. He would walk with her in the palace gardens, discussing books and art. The court watched, whispered, but could say nothing. He was the king, and she was under official protection. As months passed, the relationship became more open. Ambrosius would hold her hand in public, would dance with her at court celebrations. The whispers grew louder, but no one dared challenge him directly. He had proven his strength, his right to rule. And it became clear that Delilah was important to him in ways that went beyond political convenience. Lord Kieran, surprisingly, became an ally. He seemed to appreciate Delilah's intelligence and her genuine interest in vampire history. He would sometimes join their conversations, offering insights into court politics and vampire lore. Through him, she learned more about the delicate balance Ambrosius maintained, the constant negotiation required to keep the peace. 6 months after the vote that freed Ambrosius, he made his intentions clear to the entire court. "I intend to take Delilah Monroe as my consort," he announced during a formal session. "She will be turned with her consent and will stand at my side as queen." The reaction was mixed. Some nobles objected, calling it unprecedented, inappropriate. But others, led by Lord Kieran, supported the decision. "King Ambrosius has proven his judgment time and again," Kieran said. "If he believes this human worthy of such honor, who are we to question him? Besides, it will strengthen our ties to the human world. A queen who understands both our kind and theirs could be invaluable." The debate raged for hours. But in the end, Ambrosius's will prevailed. The court agreed, albeit reluctantly in some cases, to accept Delilah as future queen. That night, alone in his chambers, Ambrosius held her close. "Are you ready?" he asked softly. "This is your last chance to change your mind." "I don't want to change my mind. I want this. I want you. I want our forever." He kissed her deeply, tenderly. "Then I will give it to you. But know this, Delilah Monroe. Once you are turned, once you are truly mine, I will never let you go. I will love you and protect you and cherish you for the rest of eternity." "Promise?" "I swear it on everything I am." The turning was scheduled for the next full moon, as tradition dictated. Delilah spent the intervening weeks preparing, learning what her new life would be like, saying goodbye to the human world she was leaving behind. Her roommate thought she was moving abroad for an academic opportunity. Her professors thought she was pursuing independent research. Only Delilah knew the truth. She was dying to her old life so she could be reborn into a new one. The night of the turning, the entire court gathered to witness. It was a ceremony as old as vampire kind itself, sacred and solemn. Delilah wore white, as was traditional for humans being turned. Ambrosius wore black, the formal robes of a vampire king performing a transformation. They stood in the center of the grand chamber, surrounded by hundreds of vampires, all watching in silence. "Delilah Monroe," Ambrosius said, his voice carrying through the hall. "You have been offered the dark gift, the transformation into vampire kind. Do you accept this willingly, with full knowledge of what you will become?" "I do," she said clearly. "Do you understand that you will leave behind your human life, your mortality, your place in the sun?" "I understand." "Do you swear to uphold the laws of our kind, to honor our traditions, to serve as queen alongside your king?" "I swear it." He drew her close, his hand cradling the back of her head. "Then I claim you, now and forever." His fangs pierced her throat, and this time he did not stop after a few sips. He drank deeply, pulling her life force into himself. Delilah felt herself growing weak, felt her heartbeat slowing. The world began to fade to gray. Just before she lost consciousness, Ambrosius pulled back. He bit his own wrist, tearing it open, and pressed it to her mouth. "Drink," he commanded. "Drink and be reborn." She drank. His blood was different this time, potent and powerful, flooding through her with heat and light and terrible strength. She felt her body changing, felt her heart stop, and then restart with a new rhythm. Felt her senses sharpen, her strength multiply. When she finally pulled back, gasping, the world looked different. She could see every detail of the chamber, could hear every heartbeat, every breath. She could smell blood and magic and the ancient stone of the palace. And through it all, she could feel Ambrosius, a presence in her mind and soul that would never leave. "Welcome to eternity, my queen," he whispered and kissed her. The court erupted in applause. Lord Kieran stepped forward, offering his congratulations. Other nobles followed, some genuine, some clearly still uncertain, but they all bowed to her now, acknowledging her new status. Delilah barely heard them. All she could focus on was Ambrosius, on the bond between them that was now complete and unbreakable. She was his, and he was hers, for the rest of time. The celebration lasted until dawn. Delilah experienced her first sunrise as a vampire, watching from the safety of the shuttered windows as the sky lightened. She felt the pull of the sun, the instinctive need to hide from its light, but she also felt safe, protected by the ancient palace and by the man who stood beside her. "Do you regret it?" Ambrosius asked quietly. "Not for a second." She turned to him, marveling at how clearly she could see him now, every perfect detail of his face. "I love you. I chose you. And I would choose you again, every time." He pulled her into his arms, holding her as though she were the most precious thing in all the world. "You have given me something I never thought to have again," he said. "Hope, joy, love. You saved me, Delilah, in more ways than you know." We saved each other. They stood together as the sun rose, two immortals beginning their forever. Outside, the human world continued its daily routine, unaware of the vampire court beneath the city, unaware of the love story that had unfolded in the darkness. But Delilah didn't need the human world anymore. She had everything she wanted right here: a kingdom, a purpose, and a love that would last through the centuries. In the months that followed, Delilah grew into her role as queen. She learned to navigate court politics with Ambrosius's guidance, learned to use her new vampire abilities, learned the history and lore of the kind she'd become. The court, seeing her dedication and intelligence, gradually accepted her. Even those who had initially opposed her turning began to respect her. She worked alongside Ambrosius to strengthen the peace between vampires and humans, using her unique perspective to bridge the two worlds. They established new protocols for blood donation, created programs to protect both species, built a future that honored both their kinds. And through it all, their love only deepened. Every night, they would steal moments alone, talking and laughing and planning their future. Every day, they would rest together, her head on his chest, his arms around her. The bond between them was visible to all who saw them together, undeniable and absolute. Lord Kieran became a close friend and advisor, amused by the love story he'd helped facilitate. "I never thought I'd see the king so thoroughly besotted," he told Delilah one night. "You're good for him. You make him remember his humanity, even in immortality." "He makes me remember mine too," she said. "We balance each other." Years passed, then decades. Delilah watched the human world change from her position in the vampire court, marveling at technology and progress, occasionally mourning the loss of things she'd known, but she never regretted her choice. How could she, when every night she woke to Ambrosius's love, when every moment was filled with purpose and passion? They faced challenges, of course. There were vampires who still resented human influence in their world. There were humans who discovered the truth and had to be dealt with carefully. There were political struggles and dangerous enemies. But they faced everything together, king and queen, partners in all things, and they always would, for the rest of eternity. On the century anniversary of Delilah's turning, Ambrosius took her to the roof of the palace at midnight. The city sprawled below them, lights twinkling like earthbound stars. 100 years, he said, pulling her close. The first of many centuries we'll share. "Do you ever think about that night?" she asked, "when I first came to feed you, when the court had you imprisoned?" "Often it was the worst time of my existence and the best, all at once. The worst because I was starving and betrayed. The best because it brought you into my life completely. It forced us to acknowledge what we felt. I was so scared that night. I had no idea what I was doing, no idea if you'd even accept what I offered. How could I not? You were light in my darkness, hope in my despair." He turned her to face him, his silver eyes glowing softly. "You saved my life, Delilah. But more than that, you gave me a reason to want to live it." She kissed him softly. "You gave me the same gift. I was just going through the motions before I met you. Now, every night is an adventure." They stood together under the stars, two immortals who had found forever in each other. Below them, the world continued its endless dance of change and growth. But up here, in this moment, everything was perfect and complete. Delilah thought back to that frightened graduate student who had stumbled through the wrong door and found a hidden world. She thought about the choices she'd made, the risks she'd taken, the love she'd found. And she knew, with absolute certainty, that she would do it all again. Because when the whole court starved him as punishment, she alone had fed the vampire king in secret. And in doing so, she'd found her destiny, her purpose, her eternal love. Their story had begun in darkness and desperation, but it had transformed into something beautiful, something lasting, something that would endure through all the centuries to come. And as Ambrosius held her close, as they looked out over the world they protected together, Delilah knew that this was only the beginning. They had forever ahead of them, infinite nights filled with love and adventure and purpose. She was a queen, she was a vampire, she was immortal, but most importantly, She was his, and he was hers, forever.